Welcome to Alberta Conservation Association's Harvest Your Own podcast, the resource for everything hunting, navigating through the field, the butcher shop, and the kitchen. Life is all about great food. Let's get started.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Brad Fenson, an avid outdoor enthusiast who has worked as a freelance journalist, photographer, and public speaker for over 3 decades. I have hunted, fished, and foraged all my life and hope to share my passion for the outdoors. Along the way, I want to encourage everyone to harvest wild proteins and enjoy the satisfaction of providing the next meal for your family. Our goal is to educate, entertain, and inspire individuals to get outdoors and create a connection between food, health, and your future meals. Welcome to Harvest Your Own. Today we have a unique topic. We have people from Lethbridge Community College and the new Wildlife Analytics Lab. It sounds pretty high-tech science, and we have Everett Hanna here today to tell us all about it. Everett, I'll get you to give us an overview of what the lab is and introduce the people you brought with you.
Sure. Thanks a lot for having us here today, Brad. And not to start off with a corrective measure, but since I've been at the college, so you're aware, it's called Lethbridge College now. They rebranded from LCC, I think, maybe 15 years ago now. But
I won't tell you how many years ago I came through, but it was more than 15.
Yeah, not trying to date you. But, as someone who's relatively new to Lethbridge, I moved there in 2018. Yep. I still hear that a lot, like with folks I play hockey with or whatever else. So it's good to be mindful of it. But the new brand is sort of like LC is what we throw around.
There you go.
The acronym. But so the Wildlife Analytics Lab is a new initiative at the college, obviously, that we're super excited about. We have some great partners out there that have kind of got us to where we're at here today. And we're just sort of, overjoyed to be sharing it with folks like you, getting out to people in Alberta and beyond for the potential that the lab brings for students, for wildlife management, just for all the cool stuff that I think people who are in the outdoor sphere are interested in, would be happy to hear about in general. So
it's the mad scientist in everyone.
Yeah,
I run into lots of people that say, man, you got a great job. I always wanted to do that, but I make way more money doing something else. So
yeah, no doubt. But so I'm happy to have obviously members of our team here today with us too. We brought along a few people. I'll let them introduce themselves. But it's just exciting to have a team of folks working now. This started out 2.5 years ago, basically by myself plugging away in quote unquote spare time. And to see it kind of like really have legs the way it does here today, to have these colleagues now here with me, really awesome to be able to call students colleagues at the same time too, which I'm sure we'll talk a bit about. But just a great moment, I guess, to kind of sit back and be excited about. Not to take pause, we're still working hard, but it's an exciting moment nonetheless for us. So
we've kind of put out a bit of a teaser there. Maybe we should tell people just a quick synopsis of what the lab is doing.
Yeah, that's great. We'll start off with the highlights. So the lab is the first in Canada to offer what's called cementum analysis. And cementum analysis is scientific jargon for counting rings and teeth to figure out how old the animals they came from are. You can think of it like, our favorite analogy is like counting the rings in the annuli of, the rings in the cut of a tree. The big difference, though, is that with teeth, as we all know well, they're mostly deciduous. In particular, the ones we're often after when we're studying age in mammals. The incisors come in at different times in an animal's life. And so the center, if you will, the middle of the tree cookie, right, that you might count the rings on, is not necessarily the same as the center of a tree. It's quite abstract, actually, when you get down to cutting just the tip off of the root. Then you cut it paper thin, thinner than paper. We're talking about very, very thin sections. Stain it on a slide and look at it under a microscope at that. It doesn't have that relationship going back, right? But in any case, we're counting these rings inside of teeth with microscopes to figure out how old animals are, both for hunters, naturalists, trappers, whatever it might be, as well as researchers and managers. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that, but there's some real high-level application of the data that are generated from the analytics lab as well.
Cool. I'm sure people are interested. It's the science nerd in all of us that wants to know more, right?
Absolutely.
Why don't you introduce your team?
Sure, yeah. So I'll start with Kelsey Gorley. I'll let you speak for yourself and introduce yourself, Kelsey.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Gorley. I'm the lead lab technician with the Wildlife Analytics Lab at Lethbridge College, and I've been there for just over 6 months at this point, so kind of since day one of officially opening the doors.
More or less oversee operations?
Yeah, pretty much anything that goes on in the lab I'll oversee, as well as quite a bit of the outside workings that you don't typically think about in a lab tech role as well.
And who do we have helping you?
Corey Tufts. I'm a third-year ECM student at the college, and so just a student lab tech here to shave teeth and.
Yeah, you make it sound nonchalant. Just a student lab tech. In my spare time, I shave teeth.
Well, it's a normal job, right?
It sounds like a great college job.
It's better than sweeping floors.
And I'm Kevin Brooks, also a lab tech and fourth-year ECM student at the college.
Awesome. What's it like to be a student and to be able to work at the college?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. In addition, a lot of these procedures we've done in a lab setting, like in class, but now to take it into a lab, you get to learn just the more ins and outs of a lab setting over just the classroom. So
become proficient and see that the science actually works.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit of like the educational sphere vernacular around this, there's this thing that post-secondary institutions are being pushed towards called work-integrated learning. It's not new, but the focus on it, especially in Alberta, for colleges and notable universities too, is become much more laser in the last little while. So much so that funding in some instances is affected by the way in which we're achieving metrics of work-integrated learning. And so we kind of joke about, your Corey and Kevin just saying how sweet the job is. We joke about that, but in actuality, the work they're doing is overlapped directly with their education. And it's not volunteer. They're being paid to do the work. I wish I had that. I worked in my college pub and my college residence concurrently when I was in college. And, I pulled some of the high level sort of customer service things you could reference in an interview out of that. But I certainly wasn't learning technical skills around aging teeth and the management implications thereof. Not to speak for Kevin and Corey and how that might, help their careers, but certainly at a high level, you can see the benefit to students being able to do that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the hands-on learning and taking it to the next level, it benefits everyone involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say at the college institutions, typically we sort of pride ourselves in the application. It's honestly what attracts me to teaching at a college over university. I have taught at university in the past as a lecturer when I was working on my PhD back in the day. And I found, as much as I was in sort of a wildlife ecology course where we did tend to focus on application, it still always kind of leaned more in the sort of theoretical, sometimes esoteric angle than I really appreciated. Having gone to college myself too, when I started my educational career way back when, like you, I really loved the figuring out how this stuff could be operationalized. And I feel like we do a great job of that. The lab's an awesome example of that at the institution where students are learning about the lab. Just last week, Kelsey hosted 2 different lab sections from our second year Principles of Wildlife Biology course for students to come up and see the lab with this brand new set of $150,000 worth of Leica equipment that they wouldn't have seen otherwise. We hadn't established a lab to learn about how it works, but also how it's applied in the field of wildlife conservation.
Interesting. Application is a big part of it. Like some of the listeners might be, aging animals. What's the benefit of that other than like the guy that shot the world record non-trophy elk in Alberta just a couple years ago? He wanted to get it aged. Some of the Fish and Wildlife people wanted to get it aged. They ended up having to send it to Montana.
Yeah, so the applications are quite varied, actually. They start with maybe in some of your listeners' minds, certainly mine as a hunter and trapper and angler myself, just the interest piece personally. How old is this thing? Right. I shot a mule deer last year, my first mule deer ever, actually, being someone who came from Ontario originally. This is the first time I put in for an antlered muley draw, and I got to go hunt a antlered muley in 400 in the castle at WMU. I shot that buck up in sheep country on the last weekend of season, being a weekend warrior, not by choice, but because of my profession in the fall. I thought I'd shot maybe a 3.5, maybe 4.5-year-old animal based on the, how wide the bases were, and the morphology overall was a 2x2. So not a big animal by any means in the rack. But I will say in his defense, he was the only mature-ish buck in that herd of maybe 25, and he seemed to have a social status that exceeded his antler presence. Right. So I was a little curious. Anyways, I got to cleaning him up. I was up in sheep country by myself, so packed out this 130-pound load on my back in one go, because who wants to go back into grizzly bear country in the dark to check a kill site for the rest of your load? So got back home, looked at his jaw more closely in the garage and said, this guy looks a little bit older than I thought. And lo and behold, we took him to the lab. We aged him there, and we have pictures of those teeth still, and he turned out to be 8.5 years old, which is pretty darn cool. I said, when I got that tag, I said I wanted to shoot a mature, representative individual of the species as my first buck. And when I shot him and I saw the antlers, I thought, yeah, he's on his way there, but not really. But then having that age data related to, the story that was underneath the hood, so to speak,
Right.
that really, it just brought it to another level, I would say, in terms of the satisfaction, interest for me personally.
Yeah. Antler size and structure is genetic, whereas tooth cementum is science and exact.
Generally, yeah, as far as we know, I will say it's a little bit of a shady area in some ways, and I don't mean that in sort of a negative sense, but just that there are some parts of it that we don't necessarily have a comprehensive understanding of. Yeah, I won't get too nerdy on you in this moment, but it's you'd think that because growth slows in the winter, you'd only see cementum annuli animals where they're affected by less food. Yet we still see them in domestic animals and humans in some instances, where we supposedly, at least in sort of the Western world and many parts of it, most people have access to the same amount of food most of the year. So just throw that out there as a caveat. As scientists always like to leave a little bit of a way out in case we're not right. There's our way out. But yeah, anyways, to circle back to your question, the hunter angle, the naturalist angle, the trapper angle is one. The individual wants to know. Another, and I'll start next with maybe one that people wouldn't think of, is a forensic element. Understanding the age of animals after the fact and how that coincides with harvest of animals where age restrictions are implicated. You could think maybe of thin-horn sheep in the northern part of North America, where you can use annuli aging, horn annuli aging, to age them in the field. Having samples from teeth to pair up with those horns could be a critical piece of information to understand what's actually kind of going on in a sort of investigatory or forensic sense. It can also relate to disease management and monitoring. Understanding growth rates based on cementum annuli analysis tells us the actual age of animals, and we can pair those data with sort of an epidemiological lens to understand the way in which diseases are changing population demographics, but even things individually like growth rates, other types of sort of biology parameters that way. And then the most obvious, I think, to us, and honestly probably the biggest focus in many ways, is just sort of population level data. So we'll take our mule deer, for example, in the province, understanding what proportion of the bucks that are harvested in a given year that quote unquote look like mature bucks to us, but aren't actually or are actually mature bucks by age, is a really important piece of information. Think about if you had a herd of cattle and you couldn't tell the age of all of your animals unless you pulled a tooth and aged them, how much of a difference that would make for you to know for your operation.
Yeah, it's an interesting piece of the puzzle that's been missing that can actually alter the way we manage things.
Absolutely, yeah. And especially to provide the interactive effects with which us ecologists are often so interested. Think about how disease, like chronic wasting disease, might be interacting with the age distribution in a population, notably in bucks, where people tend to be most interested. Think about that interaction, how understanding the age profile of a population more precisely with tooth aging could help. So much so that organizations like the Alberta Professional Outfitter Society, APOS, is keenly interested and was the critical partner in the establishment of the lab, because they want to see enhanced wildlife conservation in the province and beyond, for that matter, but definitely in the province. And they see the establishment of this lab as a key stroke in that, making that happen, is that we're going to be able to provide a made in Alberta, first in Canada, all those taglines we've talked about already, solution to enhancing wildlife management and conservation. Benefits their members, obviously, with a stronger herd, with more appropriate measurement sort of regimes, but also just knowledge is power, as you know.
I love hearing the fact that hunters are supporting hunters and wildlife management, conservation, ecology, all of it. APO steps up, helps fund the lab, and basically we can all benefit from it.
Absolutely, yeah. And as mentioned before, as a hunter myself, we talk a lot about we're the biggest conservationists, right? We put our money where our mouth is and so on. Having a tangible example of a direct benefit like this, where it's not like, we're benefiting habitat and therefore game wildlife will benefit. This is us studying game wildlife with science, using funds from hunters to support that science and feeding information directly back into the process, so to speak. So it's pretty exciting, personally and professionally, that way.
This podcast is produced for Harvest Your Own, a program dedicated to those who want to reconnect with food and health through their experiences outdoors. HarvestYourOwn.ca is a resource for individuals to learn more about hunting and the outdoors. There's information to get you started and ensure that your compass stays pointed in the right direction to be successful. Where's your next meal coming from?
Who are your clients?
How much money you got? Our potential clients are anyone who's interested from a provincial or territorial agency or anyone else concerned with wildlife management, to a graduate student or a professor doing research, or anyone really who has a data set that they want to know the age of the animals they've collected from. It's important to note too, we talk a little bit ungulates and we tend to focus on them in this world, but this science is applicable to any mammal. I've aged teeth from ringed seals. You can do bats, you can do little rodents, as long as you understand the phenology, the eruption phenology, that is when that tooth was grown, how old it was. Maybe I'll just circle back for a second really quickly with mule deer and white-tailed deer. It's a difference at that level of the first annuli in a mule deer being a year older than in a white-tailed deer. So really, understanding that point is pretty critical. But in any case, anyone trying to research any mammal with teeth that have annuli, which is pretty much all of them to my knowledge, could apply this type of technique to it, and therefore there are potential clients. So we're already receiving samples from hunters. We have more teeth on hand right now than we can do probably in the next couple years.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been one of those things, and I've said this all along. It's sort of my mantra has been, if you build it, they will come. I've seen that writing on the wall for many years. In fact, before I started here at the college in 2018, and it's kind of really coming to fruition, almost in a pinch me kind of way, where I'm kind of like every moment. Even Kelsey's experiencing this now too, where we're like, is this really like fitting as well as we think it will? Because it keeps fitting really well every step we take. But we're growing slowly. We're not trying to take on too much. We don't want to turn clients down at this moment. But we're definitely doing all right in terms of who the client list could be and is right now.
Is it overwhelming having so much stuff that you'd need like 2 years to get caught up?
Very good question. Overwhelming? No, not really. More so, at least as far as I'm concerned, it's
That's
very
the right
exciting.
answer.
No, it's exciting to see that this is where we started. Doors open. We're just waiting for, as Everett said, build them and they will come, and they came. So we have lots of work to do. We have lots of things to learn as we go still. So looking ahead, saying we have this work to do. We have these teeth here that we can process and analyze and provide that data back to these clients that have been waiting for however long is really exciting. It'd be even more exciting if we were in a position to say, oh, we can get this all done this year and then we can just go. But as Everett said, that kind of slow growth, make sure we're doing everything really well, make sure we're doing it properly and giving really good results is number one. So the excitement comes from we have the time, we have the teeth, and we can really hone in and make sure we're doing this right.
I'm guessing that the process isn't like a couple of minutes.
No. To process a tooth from start to finish could take about a week. So we definitely don't process just one tooth at a time in the lab. We'll do batches of a couple hundred at a time. But if you were to take a single tooth from start to finish, so starting with the tooth, finishing with a mounted stain slide that we can look at the annuli and get an age off of, you're looking at about a week and a half.
That's pretty significant. What it's telling me is there's huge potential for growth.
Yes, automation's everywhere these days, of course. We have some, we're kind of bordering on trade secret type stuff, but we have some real interest and some colleagues we're working with to automate portions of the process and utilize the power that AI is providing us with in many instances to enhance. At the end of the day, one of the real advantages we have as a post-secondary institution beyond facilitating student work, student research potential. And I should mention too before I go on, Kelsey is somewhat of a former student too. That's how we know each other. Kelsey studied at the University of Lethbridge in the environmental sciences program there, but came over to our institution at the college for what they call their tech semester or their technical semester, and took my second year wildlife biology course at that time. That's how we met. Then Kelsey, you can kind of tell the story, but she had a moose tooth she wanted me to age last year. We were just joking about it on the way over here, which was a year ago.
Yeah. So the first time I ever heard about cementum analysis in wildlife teeth was, as Everett said, taking his wildlife biology course at Lethbridge College. And so last year in early October, I had the opportunity to harvest a nice central Alberta bull moose.
Don't be too specific.
No, central somewhere Alberta bull moose with my dad. So this was in an area where your priority was super high. I'd been putting in for 13 years to get enough priority points for this tag. So it just happened that we pulled the tag, got the opportunity. We went out for a week. It was day 3, I think. We went out in the morning. Perfect morning. It was frosty. It was warm. The moose came out to us after we did some calling, got a real good shot on him, took him down. And when we get up to him, we're like, this guy looks kind of old, but he's a little deceptive. Like those antlers are kind of small and a typical valley bull. But my dad was saying, oh, I think he's probably 6 or 7. And I was saying, no, I think he's closer to 4 or 5. So we kind of played the game with our hunting camp of how old do you think this moose is? Because I knew that I could go back home to Lethbridge and contact Dr. Hannah and say, hey, I've got this moose. Tell me how old it is. So I did play fair. I put my wager in before I gave Everett the moose tooth. But yeah, it turned out he took the tooth, he processed it, and he pulled an age of 9.5 off of it. So it was well over what any of us would have expected that moose to be. And it was really cool to see that even though this animal was something my dad and I, who've been hunting for decades, would have aged at 6 or 7, was actually 9.5 years old. So.
Yep. The bull was almost around when you started putting in for the draws.
yeah, almost.
And, maybe it's inspiration for hunters. If you don't get a really big set of antlers to put on your wall, you can get a slide of that tooth and show the age.
Yeah.
That's the real trophy.
Yeah, throw that up there with your mount, brag about it to your hunting buddies. Like it's no longer a game of who can get the biggest guy. It's who can get the oldest, trickiest guy out there who can fool them enough.
Yeah, once they've seen it all.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Kelsey, maybe you could add a little bit more about sort of the services we provide to hunters who are interested in that stuff with regards to, getting a picture of the slide or a certificate perhaps, or whatever that might look like.
Yeah, so when a hunter sends us a tooth, they have a couple of options. So I'll just kind of go over all of them. First and foremost is obviously cementum analysis. So you send us a tooth, you want cementum analysis, you're going to get an age off of this thing. We do have optional services though, so we can do the extraction right in lab. So if you're out in the fields, you've just harvested your animal and you're really uncomfortable trying to pull these teeth out because you don't want to damage them, you could send us in the jaw or a portion of the jaw and we'll extract them in lab for you. Another optional service is digital imaging of the slide that we use to age your animal. So we will send you a picture, we'll annotate the annuli, and you can see what was inside of that animal's tooth and what informed us as to giving it the age that we did. And then, not as of yet, but it is in the works to have an age certificate as well. So it will be a formal certificate that you could purchase. It'll be annotated and signed. It'll have the species, the age. Maybe you gave the animal a nickname. We can throw that on there for you too. But
outstanding.
Just a nice little something to throw up there with your trophy or non-trophy, whatever it may be, and really show off how old it is.
Nice. So what are the steps a hunter has to take to get in touch with you, send things in? Do they need to keep things refrigerated, use a special envelope? What's the go?
Yeah, so the best thing to do would be step 1, check out our website, Lethbridge College /Wildlife Analytics Lab. It's hyphenated in between. Even a Google search will pull us up though. There's going to be a lot of resources on that. So we have a tooth extraction guide. So it'll walk you through step by step if you want to extract a tooth yourself or if you want to cut off the incisor bar, so just that front portion of the jaw, and send us that. For packaging, it'll outline that too, but basically just in a paper envelope, wrap it in paper towel if it's looking a little particularly wet and slimy, but send us in a paper envelope. We'll receive it at the lab. We'll do our processing. We'll get an age off of it, and we'll be in contact with the age of what that is. So all of that's going to be on our website. There will be a link you can go to purchase the services, pay online, all the information you could possibly need about extraction or shipping. Anything like that will all be on there. And if you're still struggling with some of the step-by-steps, you can always just give us a call or send us an email. Our contact info's on the website as well.
Oh, nice. As a lab tech, how many teeth come in where there's the discussion ahead of time? Well, I think this one's going to come out at 12, or, for sure this one's only 2 or something like that when you get things in.
Well, we're just starting to get our feet under us right now.
Yep.
So haven't had the chance to put in what limited funds students have in the pool to start betting.
Right.
But, it's
there used to be aging boards where they had jaws from the different ages of animals they'd put up, and you could do a comparison of tooth wear and stuff like that. So this really takes things to the next level, but you see so many of them that I would imagine eventually you'll get pretty good at guesstimating what it is, and then you can find out the truth.
Well, that's the hope, yeah.
Okay. If I could just add something in there, Brad, when it comes to aging the teeth, it's happening at different steps and by different people. And importantly, in most instances, it is blind. So that by the time the tooth arrives at the stage of being aged, which is on a slide stained, as abstract as you can get with a sample code, not the sort of the animal in the jaw there in a picture beside you, we really do want to make sure it's unbiased. And that aging right now is primarily done by me, the actual counting the annuli and whatnot, as much as it is, similar to counting rings in a tree. There are some important sort of qualitative and quantitative elements to it. We append what are called certainty codes to our estimates also on our big contracts that allow us to give the client an understanding of how confident we are in the age we've assigned to it. At the end of the day, it is an estimate, although it's pretty good, 95% plus in many instances. It is still just an estimate at the end of the day, so we're cautious to make sure that it's rigorous, but also honest when we provide it to clients. And just a related note too, like one of the behind the scenes way in which we do the whole QA/QC thing is with known age animals. In fact, we have a data set of hundreds of known age farmed elk, for better or worse, teeth that I extracted from farmed elk and received their actual known ages from producers. And we use those as both a training as well as a sort of proof of concept data set. And we've also engaged in blind comparative analyses with our lab samples to establish the levels of accuracy with known age animals that we were achieving through our analysis process. So, as much as possible, we don't actually want to know what animal the tooth is from that we're aging it. I gave you instances, and Kelsey gave you an instance of her moose and my muley I mentioned, where we do know that in fact, and so you can't help it, you're biased, and it is what it is. There are other service providers in the U.S. that sometimes do request hunters to estimate the age when they send in their teeth, and that's something we sort of lean away from rather than into. Although it is extra information, we don't want to be misleading ourselves or the client for that matter with our estimate by having pre-existing knowledge or whatever. So we do try not have that happen as much as possible.
Yeah, it's very scientific and very professional in terms of how you're deploying the teeth is what I'll call it. Deploying it is everything from pulling it to staining, aging, all the rest of it.
Yep, absolutely.
This podcast was made possible by Alberta Conservation Association and the Harvest Your Own community. If you're interested in harvesting your own food, there's a comprehensive collection of information to gain insight and knowledge. Head to the field, harvest your own protein, prepare it, and taste the results. HarvestYourOwn.ca is a library of information from getting started and geared up to processing, butchering, and cooking wild game to make the connection between health and food.
Now, you had mentioned this took more than just the college, it's a community. Who are the other partners?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did mention APOS, but I'll mention them again first in the list because of how outstanding their financial contribution has been. Nearly $150,000 to support the lab, plus ongoing business with them moving forward. APOS has really put their money where their mouth is in this case, right? It kind of to circle back to what we said earlier about being a hunter and being proud of seeing the money go to action. It's been really exciting to work with APOS, not only as it relates to the financial support, but also the sort of advocacy and championing of our lab as a made in Alberta, made in Canada solution that can help people across the country and beyond. So we're just absolutely indebted to APOS. The folks we've worked with over there has just been all positive, and we're trying to celebrate that at every moment we can. Kelsey and myself are hoping to head up to their AGM in December, in fact, to put on a table there and do the meet and greet and maybe get more people interested from their community than we already have and the likes. But also some pretty instrumental folks with the provincial government now in Alberta environment and protected areas. Both biologists and managers amongst their ranks, local and otherwise, have been sort of part of the process in various consultative, collaborative capacities as we built up the lab. And not to overlook, Harvest Your Own, ACA's very own Todd Z came, for an early lab tour and has been a proponent collaboratively with APOS in, brainstorming ideas for how we can take this idea further in the province. And maybe that looks like running hunter check stations in the future where, in certain areas that we're interested, say where there's CWDs really prevalent or on the edge of it or whatever other management priority there might be. We can engage with groups like ACA going forward also, and APOS for that matter, to enhance, again, wildlife conservation in the province through tooth analysis. So those are some sort of the key players. And of course, our team, right, the folks we have here today. My dean, Dr. Terry Kowalczyk, has been just an absolutely amazing champion of the lab in any way that he can, from discretionary sort of budget / support type stuff to just being a champion in our corner at every turn. That's been pretty critical for us, too, to get off the ground and running.
It's all very positive, and again, made in Alberta. We're fortunate to have it in our backyards. It's not somewhere far away. What's the main message we want to get out to the public and hunters? What can we do to benefit the lab?
Yeah, the best thing you can do to benefit the lab is to send us samples. And to be clear, again, I want to just mention that we are a revenue neutral institution. So while we do make a temporary profit off of the fees we charge for the service, they're only meant to run us at a neutral, or honestly, in some instances, very slightly below neutral budget. So we're not walking home with cash in our pockets as a result. So really genuinely, you're supporting post-secondary education, but also that money is proportionately being invested back into the system that you're interested in, wildlife management, at the rate at which you give it to us to do the work, right? If the data are contributed to provincial management, it's a good thing for everybody. It's highly confidential. If you're that person, I'm a sheep hunter myself. I know many sheep hunters who won't even say what corner of the province they hunt in.
On the mountain.
On the mountain, right? Yeah. Yeah, I heard somebody say the other day, actually it was my dean, Terry, who said the other day that the guy he knows who shot the record whitetail in Manitoba years ago was asked once where he shot it, and he said, in the neck, which was a good one. I hadn't heard that one yet. My usual response for spots in the south is southern Alberta, but in the neck trumps that one.
Zipper Lip Creek.
Yeah, exactly. Any variation of that. But yeah, so it's all confidential to the degree to which you want it to be. People working in the lab, for example, lab techs won't even necessarily know the name of the person who submitted the tooth they're working on a given day. Of course, it's a closed deal with you at the end too, whether you want your data disclosed in any form to contribute to management or otherwise, or to just be straight back to you. So I'd say those are two pretty high level points to think about, but not to forget you're also supporting student employment and student research potential.
Yeah.
Maybe Corey and Kevin can speak a bit too to like what it looks like to have a chance to possibly, Kevin's a little past to the point of it. He's already working away on his thesis project, but Corey's kind of up and coming on this, and that's one of the big things we're doing is providing a database potentially for a student to conduct research on too. I think that's really exciting for me, of course, as a faculty member, but for someone wanting to do business with us and support student research at the same time, plus conservation in the province, right?
It all goes hand in hand.
Hand in hand,
Yep.
absolutely.
So tell us what it means.
Oh, it's awesome. So the school, you have to do a senior project, and to be able to be employed while you're doing that research, and also the opportunity, kind of not breaking new ground, but the opportunity for first in Canada, first in Alberta, like that kind of data, and to be able to actually apply that, you could probably even go beyond just presenting at the school. You can go to conferences and kind of talk about extending that further beyond just the college is a really exciting opportunity.
It's really the next level from when I went through the college, because you already have your resume created when you graduate.
Oh, yeah. And also, what seems like a pretty critical aspect of this field is public outreach, public engagement. And I don't think of any other opportunity in the world where I would have to come talk onto a podcast about this. So this is a really unique opportunity.
Well, we're glad to have you. Yeah. What's it mean to somebody that's almost finished? 4th year, you've come through, you've got the experience. Where's it going to take you from here?
Well, I kind of wish that he had got this lab up and running a year earlier. I would have had a better data set for my project. But the work that I'll be doing will help to aid in future studies that other future students can use for their senior project, and make life a little bit easier for them, I guess.
Does it plant a seed to help you see direction in terms of where your career's going or where you'd like it to go?
Yeah, so currently I do work in the wildlife field, and this is just another token that I can add onto the resume that with this, invaluable lab experience.
Awesome. Everett, is there anything else or anyone else want to add about the lab that here's your chance to share with the public of Alberta?
We're excited to be first in Canada, made in Alberta, to have the funding and collaborative relationships we've established, and to be enhancing wildlife conservation in Canada, but also the student experience at the college. Corey might not have ironed out what his project is yet, and Kevin's just kind of figuring out what this will mean to him in his career, not the lab specifically, but the process of doing his own research project. If we can support that and enhance it in any way for a handful of students, it's pretty amazing, because that's a pretty formative experience for our students, is designing their own project, executing their own project, and most importantly, as Corey said, speaking to somebody about it. Many of our students will go to conferences to present about their work, And I hope that some of that work in the future will be generated from the lab. That's kind of like, full circle for me to see. Yeah. I also have a consultancy that privately run in environmental science, and I sometimes get to hire students as subcontractors there, and that feels really good. But if this was all an in-house sort of academia solution to that same notion, that's really the bee's knees for me. So thank you, obviously, for having us here. It's amazing to talk about it.
Yeah, I'll add just a little something. Again, thank you, Brad, for having us on today. And as Everett said, this is very exciting. It's the first in Canada to do this kind of thing. But I just want to add as well, you mentioned earlier about these funds going back into conservation in your province, in your country where you go hunting. And I was actually just listening to your episode with Todd Zimmerling on the MSL special license, and the conversation you guys were having about, talking to hunters. They're so willing to even accept a price increase in tags if they know that money is going back to conserving these animals that they're interested in hunting and recreating with. So just as Everett was saying, like when you send a tooth to our lab to get aged, not only do you get to find out, this is really cool, this muley that I just shot with this awesome experience was 6.5 years old. Like, wow, how do I know that? But the funds that you're putting in there and the cost of getting that done also goes back to conserving those mule deer. It'll go into a larger data set that helps inform management decisions to make mule deer hunting even better in Alberta or whatever it is that we're looking at the time. So it's not just a point of I'm interested in how old this animal is, but you're also contributing to that larger data set that has province, country, even global implications for wildlife management.
Absolutely. As a science geek, I get very excited. And I know a lot of the listeners will too. It's very profound to have it in our own province and have it Alberta made with our own researchers, our own students. And, we're glad to have you in Alberta. Yep. And I guess the best thing to say is congratulations. This is new ground for all of us, and I can see how all of us are going to benefit going into the future.
Yeah, we really, really appreciate that, genuinely. Very kind to you, and appreciate you hosting us. We should mention, too, we do have a growing online presence. Of course, we mentioned the website, lethbridgecollege.ca/wildlife analytics lab, with hyphens between wildlife analytics and lab. But also we're on Instagram. People can check us out there, LC_wildlife analytics lab. And we're kind of working on a 2 per week kind of post thing. But some of the task of the student lab techs has been to develop content. As you're probably well aware, developing content can be a challenge at times. Yep. But people can learn more about like the inside process, so to speak, of what we're doing, as well as some more high level stuff around the lab. I'm sure we're going to try and get a photo here today to throw up there to say, hey,
Absolutely.
Check us out.
Yep. And we'll post all your social media addresses and where people can find more information because they will be asking.
Excellent. We really appreciate that. Thank you, Brad.
Thanks for coming out today.
Thank you.
We hope to inspire people to reconnect with nature and appreciate where your food comes from by harvesting your own. For more information on getting started or to learn specifics about the Field to Fork experience, visit harvestyourown.ca and follow on Facebook and Instagram. Check back often for new material, recipes, and videos that are posted regularly. Please subscribe to Harvest Your Own podcast and take the time to rate and review the show to help us build a dedicated core of passionate hunters as our regular audience. Until next time, embrace the outdoors and all it has to offer. Thanks for joining us.